Well, am I the only one missing this? How come nobody is talking about the rent increases? Rent increases are through the roof in this country. They've gone up 17% on rent in 1 year in America. That's larger than, well, inflation. Inflation has only rose 8.5%, but rent has rose 17%. Now, you know that we support rent control. It was way back when a candidate ran for mayor in New York City. And he famously said the rent is too damn high. And now, when he was being laughed at to have his campaign covered in the media, and now people are saying, wait a minute, rent is rose 17% in 1 year? Everyone wants to try to act like the homeless situation is purely about addiction. It's not. There's way more. A lot of individuals in your country are elderly and pay rent. If their rent increases more than their, well, fixed income of Social Security, they go homeless. So a lot of people who are homeless now on the street, it had nothing to do with addiction, nothing to do with mental health. We all have mental health issues. These are not people who are generally out on the street who you see homeless now. These are new people who can't afford their rent. They're not even telling you how bad this is. They can't explain it to anyone because it makes no sense. Listen to what I'm telling you. In San Francisco and Chicago, the rent increased, but it's still not back to pre-pandemic levels. Now you look at other places. For instance, the governor in Florida, Ron DeSantis, who you need to go this November and vote the hell out of office. Because the reason he's distracting you about don't say gay in school, critical race theory in school, the reason he's trying to target a congressional black district and take away African Americans' representation, the reason he's doing all of those horrible and evil things is because he doesn't want to talk about the rent increase. Get this. Tampa Bay in Florida, their rent has increased year over year 31%. The median rent price in Tampa right now in Florida is $2,114. That's higher than San Jose, California. That's higher than Seattle, Washington. Those are tech hubs. People in Tampa are paying more rent than on the West Coast. than in Denver, than in Salt Lake City. It's crazy. And that's why they want to try to distract you. Because you're not going to complain about what's really going on. If they can get you, the conservatives, the people who con America, if they can get you distracted on nonsensical dumb shit, then they can literally bend you over and gouge you for everything you have. And that's exactly what they're doing. He'll tell you about the freest state in Florida, but where they're paying $2,100 a month in rent, I'm sure they don't feel like they're free. You know, they'll talk about the homeless situation here on the West Coast. And I told you, a lot of new faces I'm seeing. A lot of people who are coming out west are coming from places like Florida, from places like Texas. They're homeless in their state, and they're coming out west to get resources. Because you have governors like Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis who don't want you to be in their state if you're poor. So they're trying to get all of their homeless people to go out west. And then they can say, look at the West Coast. They have a huge homeless crisis. But you ask people, predominantly, where are you from? And they'll tell you, I'm not originally from Seattle. I'm from Ohio. I'm from Florida. I'm from Louisiana. Now we know people move. But we don't talk about people moving because they're homeless to places where they can get resources and mutual aid. There's a ton of homelessness in Florida. They just don't talk about it. They'd rather talk about the homeless crisis in Seattle and act like there's no homeless people in Tampa. I guarantee you, there's probably hundreds of thousands of homeless people or people at risk of being homeless right now in Tampa. And you'll never hear about that on the news. It's crazy. It's crazy. 17% increase in rent. And you're not outside complaining that they're gouging you. That's why none of the rest of us can do anything. We know what's happening. We know that they're allowing it to happen. But if you don't complain and stand up for yourself, then people are going to take advantage of it. You know, rent control should have been a thing a long time ago imposed in major cities in this country. Conservatives love saying rent control doesn't work. But that's a lie. Rent control definitely works. If you know that in every 5 years, your rent can only go up 5%, don't you know that's having peace of mind? You know that in 5 years, they can't raise your rent any more than 5%. That's the functionality of rent control. The West Coast, San Francisco, has done this. Many West Coast major cities have done this. Now they haven't done it as effectively as it should be done, but they've done it. And that's why you see in Detroit, in Chicago, San Francisco, Seattle, that we don't have a 31% year-over-year rent increase like in Tampa. because of rent control. The property developers and managers take advantage of you. I'm just saying that. It's a capitalistic system. If you allow the functionality to abuse you, it most certainly always will. Tampa, they're abusing you. You should have a form of rent control. There's no way in the world I would pay $2,100 to live in Tampa, Florida. I wouldn't even pay to live in Florida to begin with. Not under the tyrant and dictator who currently is governor. But $2,100 to rent in Florida, the median rent price in Tampa. That's preposterous. That's outlandish. It's ludicrous and idiocracy that that's even been allowed to occur. Tampa residents, there's an election this year. You have to make changes. You have to at this point. You don't have another choice. You can either continue taking that type of abuse, or you can elect people who are going to tell you that that type of abuse no longer can be allowed to happen. Nobody is even focusing on all the senior citizens who cannot keep up with rent increases in America. There was a study that was just recently done. I forget by who exactly. But it said by 2030, it's estimated that millions of senior citizens are going to be homeless in America. Their fixed income cannot keep up with 17% year-over-year rent increases. Social Security doesn't do a 17% increase. I've worked with elderly individuals on fixed income to keep them housed. I know. I looked at their budgets, and there was nothing really to cut. They're pretty frugal. They don't have many amenities. They don't buy Oculus. They don't have iPads and all of those Nintendo things. They live pretty frugally. They might smoke too many cigarettes and drink a little too much alcohol and maybe partake in recreational marijuana. But by no means are they splurging and gouging. They're not going to be able to keep their apartments. And these mayors, governors, state senators, they're not telling you that you're going to be homeless. The only solution at this point is rent control. It's essential. You have to have rent control. It's out of control. You're telling me after a pandemic where people, millions, are sick and can't physically go to work because of long COVID, you're telling me that people can afford a 17% rent increase year over year? See, this is why capitalism is stupid. Because it tells the absurdity of insanity and wants us to believe it. They'll say rent control is socialism. Rent control, whether it's socialism or zoology, it shouldn't matter. If it's good policy and it'll keep elderly individuals housed, what difference does it make who gets the credit? See, capitalists also cannot admit when certain functionalities in their system need an upgrade or an improvement. They rather just say no. If people go homeless, it's their fault. They're drug addicts. They're alcoholics. They didn't save for retirement like you did. They rather just blame the individual at every juncturing point than to admit that certain elements in their system don't mesh well with human experience. Tampa, you should be out in the street banging on every door about a 31% rent increase. That's bonkers and insanity. There's absolutely nothing in Tampa that would justify a median rent increase of 31% year over year directly after a global pandemic. Did Martians land in Tampa and build pyramids? Because that would be the only thing that would drive rent to be that crazy. There would have to be some spectacular draw to get me to pay $2,100 a month in rent in Tampa. You're not protesting any of this bullshit, and that's why they're going to continue to do it. You have to put your foot down and say enough.